And just before we get to our last speaker, I have to talk about a reference. Barry Trudeau, when he was up singing the song, mentioned a little 11-year-old girl. Well, I saw that same 11-year-old girl at the Rio Theater when there was a big anti-tanker meeting. And I think that all of you are going to get a chance to meet that girl, because when you go home, if you have the Vancouver Sun newspaper, Pete McMartin wrote this amazing column in today's paper. You must read it. She is so inspirational, and she's no token. She's a powerhouse. Right, Ben? Yeah. So her name is Tsleil-Waututh. Pardon me.
Her name's Takaya Blaney. She's from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. She's an 11-year-old.
And she is amazing. She's what we're doing this all for. She's the hope for the future. And so I really recommend you get a hold of the Sun. You can get it online if you don't have it at home, and read Pete McMartin's column today. So we come to our last speaker, and this is a very special person, Sven Biggs, because he and Ben are going around the Fraser Valley and the Vancouver Lower Mainland holding meetings like this. These town hall meetings, this isn't the only one. This is just one of many. And we're here for one night, but Ben and Sven are here for each and every meeting. And we're just so lucky to have these two organizations doing this amazing work. So I'd like to thank you. Let's give them a hand. You can't give it too many times to these people. Now about Sven, just a little so you know about him. Before he became the campaign director at Tanker Free BC, Sven spent 4 years working for the Wilderness Committee. So these guys are obviously longtime buddies. And he was their director of outreach. And Tanker Free BC is committed to building grassroots opposition to the Kinder Morgan and the Enridge pipelines. And tonight, Sven's going to talk a little bit about how we can do that right here in our neighborhood.
Okay, well, Tanker Free BC is working on a number of interesting projects. One of them is a lot of our volunteers and board members work in the television and film industry. So we are making a series of short movies, and we have the first of them to show you tonight. Let's see if we didn't mess up the projector too much. Thanks. I know that was a little bit choppy. If you didn't get to see it all, go to tankerfreebc.org and you can watch it there. Much better quality, I promise. So when I talk to people about tankers and pipelines, one of the most common questions I get asked is simply, how are you going to stop these things? And I guess it's a fair question. We're up against some pretty formidable foes. So tonight I want to use my time to talk a little bit about how I answer that question and essentially how we win this campaign. So when it comes down to it, there's only really two kinds of power in this world. There's money and there's people. In case you were wondering which side Kinder Morgan and Enbridge are on, let me give you a couple of facts. Enbridge will spend over $100 million on PR as they go through the environmental assessment process for the Northern Gateway project alone. Richard Kinder, who is the chairman and CEO of Kinder Morgan, is personally worth $8.2 billion, which makes him the 46th richest man in America. We've all seen what kind of effect this money can have on our federal government. We've seen the unprecedented attacks on civil society, attacks on science itself, and most recently, attacks on the regulatory process for these projects themselves in the form of Bill C-38. In the face of these kinds of attacks, it's really inspiring to see there's people like the people who are up here on this panel tonight. Scientists, environmental groups, local politicians that won't be silenced or intimidated by the threats of their government. But they, on their own, are not going to be enough to stop these projects. To do that, we're going to need people power, and that means you. That's why we're holding this series of town hall meetings. We want to open up this campaign and allow people like you to get involved. So I really urge you that before you leave tonight, you share your contact information with one of the groups that's here tonight. I know there's, in fact, a special sign-up sheet at the back to start a local group here in Kitsilano. So if you want to be part of that, please do sign up on your way out at the back door. Having said that, not even all the people in this room are going to be enough. We're going to need your families and your friends. We're going to need your neighbors. We're going to need a broad community that opposes these projects. So we're going to need to be spending the rest of this summer out on the streets and the doorsteps of Kitsilano, meeting people around their kitchen tables, and having conversations about, like we've had tonight, about what these pipelines mean for our communities. The thing about that is, though, I'm not the best person to have that kind of conversation. Ben's not the best kind of person. Not even Mel is the best kind of person to have that conversation. It's you. So tonight, we're going to draft you into the people power movement to stop tankers and pipelines. Throughout history and on the news every night, you can see examples of how people power changes the world, whether it's bringing down dictators in the Middle East or bringing down the Berlin Wall. We know that people power plays an important part in our society. People power got women the vote. It was the driving force behind the civil rights movement, and it stopped wars. Right here in Kitsilano, we know that people power stopped freeway expansion in the 1960s and founded Greenpeace. And we're going to need a people power movement again to stop these tankers. So I really want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I want to encourage you to get involved and ask questions in our question and answer period. There's also a volunteer sign up at the back, and we're having a very special canvas this weekend. As some of you probably know, tomorrow is the second anniversary of the Kalamazoo spill. And all across North America, there is going to be actions held to honor that day. It's a national, or the movement is called We Are the Kalamazoo. So Tanker Free BC organized a local component for that. We're going to be having a door-to-door canvas in the neighborhood that was affected by the 2007 oil spill in Burnaby, which is also just blocks from the terminal where the tankers are filled up. So if you can give us a couple of hours on Saturday, so we're starting at 1:30. We're meeting in Westridge Park, which is just around the corner from the terminal. Please talk to AJ on your way out, and she'll help you get signed up for that. Thank you again for joining us tonight. I know that together we're going to stop these pipelines and tankers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sven. You know, it's tireless people like Sven that help us get motivated to get things done. And I hope that before you leave, you do sign up at the back, you get involved. There's a fundraising thing going around to help pay. We don't have to pay for this hall because St. James donated it tonight, but there's lots of other expenses. Now, to me, when I read the newspaper, I like to read the letters to the editor section first. And this is, to me, the letter to the editor section. This is where you get to make a comment and a question. And here's the ground rules. You have 1 minute. I might be a teeny bit lenient, but not too much. And you can ask a question, or you can make a comment, or you can try and do both. And if you do ask a question, please direct it to one of the people up here, because we don't need to have everybody answering the same question. AJ, are you around? All right. Where's AJ? And you got your mic? Okay. This is actually going to be the first announcement or speech. Go ahead.
Hey, so I'm Joel, and I'm from a group called Forest Ethics Advocacy. We have the pleasure of working with Tanker Free BC and Wilderness Committee on campaigns to stop the pipelines and tankers. And Sven mentioned the We Are the Kalamazoo solidarity actions happening across North America. They're doing the canvas in Burnaby tomorrow. And I wanted to let you know that the sort of kickoff for these actions is happening actually tonight following this event. Forest Ethics Advocacy has made signs like this one. They say, if you can't see it, notice no river use until further notice due to Enbridge oil spill. We've planted them already about 10 rivers along the Enbridge pipeline route up north. And a lot of people don't realize the Fraser River is actually, the upper Fraser would be affected by the Enbridge pipeline. So I'm inviting all of you to join me. We have carpools organized to go following this event down to a park on the Fraser River. We're going to put up a sign like this to help people kind of visualize what the impact of a pipeline spill would be on our watershed. So you can join me for that. It's going to be a candlelit vigil as we install one of these signs and remember the devastating 3 million barrel Kalamazoo oil spill. So I'll let you all get to questions, but if you do want to join us for the vigil, is Trevor here? Do you want to stand up and wave so everybody can see you? Oh, he went to get the sign. Anyways, Trevor will be standing outside with the sign, so he'll be easy to find, and he'll get you hooked up with carpools.
Wow. You just heard what Sven said, that it's not us up here that's got the solutions, it's you out there, and here we go, first one already. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, who's got a question?
Just stick your hand up if you want to say something, and she'll come running down to you. AJ.
Well, okay. Well, thank you for putting this on. And Joyce Murray, I'm the Liberal Member of Parliament for this area, Vancouver Quadra. So, I mean, I was primarily here to listen, but I have a couple of facts, I have a perspective, and then I have an opinion that I wanted to share. I appreciated what I heard about the risk of spills, and as you know, I've been against the tanker traffic in the Pacific North and the Enbridge Gateway pipeline. And when I came here to listen, I can tell you I have listened to Enbridge. I've actually sat through 3 of their presentations. And so here's fact number 1, that in 2010, when I was presenting my bill C606 and telling a different story, Enbridge lobbied in Ottawa 49 times that year. Wow. And when I looked up in the lobbying registry for environmental groups, the number of lobbying was 0. So when you hear about radical foreign-funded environmental groups, you can remember that statistic perhaps. But from my perspective, we have a real choice point here with our oil and gas industry and our country. And I think some of the speakers have already spoken to this, and I'm not referring to the ordinary guy. I consider myself an everyday mom who's concerned about the future. I'm not referring to Ben the juggler. I'm a juggler too, by the way, Ben. Sometime we'll juggle pins together. It was Rueben who was talking about our country, our future, and it's up to us. And the choice point is one that we already arrived at in forestry, and I was in forestry since the mid-1970s as a tree planter. And back in the 70s and early 80s, we were clear-cutting right down to the waterfront in Canada. And it took people like you in gatherings like this, and people in the reforestation industry like me and my colleagues to say, we're at a choice point here. One choice is the Sweden model, where we clear-cut and we replace it with plantations that don't really have wildlife but have a fiber farm. And the other choice is that we manage more sustainably. We put aside wildlife habitat areas. We put aside some old growth areas. We eliminate the big clear cuts, and we manage our forests so that we keep the structure, the function, the ecosystems, and the wildlife. And with everybody's work, we went down that path. It's not perfect, and pine bark beetle is actually rolling back the clock on that, unfortunately. But so I'm going to tell you that I was down in New Orleans 2 weeks after the spill in the Gulf. And I was taken for a ride with some parliamentarians by a biologist who was dealing with the oil spill. And I was expecting her to just be aghast. This is an environmental biologist. And she said, well, you know, we've accepted that oil and gas is a very important part of our economy here, and this is just one of the things that you have to accept when you have an important oil and gas industry with all of the jobs it creates. So we're going to the choice point of whether we're going to have sustainable use of our asset that is respectful of climate change and prices pollution and helps fund the alternatives that will deal with climate change, or whether we're going to be beholden in our country to a very powerful oil and gas industry with little regulatory oversight and the kind of risks that we're seeing here. So thank you for being here, for being part of that choice to go down the sustainable and responsible route. So thank you.
Hi, my name's Dana Rudd. My partner Leslie Iwerks has made 3 movies on the oil sands, 2 movies on the oil sands, 1 on the Keystone XL. The Keystone XL pipeline movie was shown in Congress and shown to Obama, and it actually caused him to delay, to some extent, in the consideration of delaying the XL pipeline. What we found with these projects is that people just make adjustments. So Keystone XL, they said that they could not reroute the Keystone XL. It was impossible. As soon as Obama said, you can't do it, they said, yes, we can reroute it. The money that they are saying that they were going to put $35 million into the Coast Guard to help with the cleanup if there's ever a disaster. Meanwhile, they closed the closest Coast Guard station to the harbor, right? The other problem is this. Enbridge just said that they're going to put $500 million more into protecting these pipes, okay? Why wasn't the $500 million in there before? They're just flashing dollars in front of you. The bottom line is this. Bitumen sinks. That's right. The solvent, the benzene, will be taken out of the bitumen and shipped back to Alberta. Those tankers will be loaded with tar. If there's ever a rupture, you cannot technically clean it up. It's impossible. There is no way it doesn't. You can't burn it off, you can't skim it, and you can't take microbes and take it out. It's impossible technically to recover bitumen from the bottom of the ocean. The tidal bores will spread it over hundreds of miles. You will see the end of the bottom of your ocean for 50 to 100 years.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, folks. So my name is Sheila. I'm just helping to organize these events with Tanker Free BC and Wilderness Committee, and I just wanted to make some slight announcements. As I think Sven had said, you know, the power of our movement to oppose this is going to come from the power of the people, and that's going to come from different groups working together. And so we have a listserv sign-up at the table here, so if you haven't already, if you don't mind sharing your email contact, we are going to follow up with a Google group type listserv thing to help facilitate some more organizing here in Kitsilano to move forward. Also, we have a film that's there called Whitewater, Black Gold, and this was made just by a local guide, essentially following a proverbial drop of water from the Athabasca Glacier down to the Lake Athabasca at the front lines of tar sands mining. And it provides a really good big picture presentation on the tar sands, how these plans for tankers and pipelines are coming to BC, as well as small-scale nuclear power projects in the prairies. You know, so really exposing how this is this pretty big giga project affecting all of us across Canada. So if you don't mind checking it out, want to take one home, that'd be fantastic. And also sign up at these sheets to do some more organizing on this. All right, thank you.
Okay, folks, if you could raise your hands and kind of, when our next speaker starts, and just kind of make eye contact with me, then I can get kind of a cue going.
My name's Peter Pronzos, and I just wanted to follow up on the thread that many people have said, including Sven, about people power. And I want to remind us of some of the things that we've done here and across North America. Some of you may remember back during the Vietnam War. At one point, Nixon wanted to drop nuclear weapons on the Vietnamese. And that war criminal Kissinger said, you can't do it. People will not stand for that. And the peace movement then prevented the second use of nuclear weapons by the United States because of the power of the people. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan brought back the new Cold War. He threatened to attack the Soviet Union. Here in Vancouver, we had the largest peace movement in North America. Some of you may remember we had over 100,000 people coming out to march. We had city council sending notices to every household in Vancouver saying, please attend. I remember seeing police wearing badges saying, police for peace. We can do that again with these kinds of issues. Again, when the peace movement got very strong in the 80s and Reagan had problems at home, political problems, he had to move in a progressive direction, and he was forced to sign the first treaty which actually reduced nuclear missiles, the INF Treaty in Europe. Today, I think you're seeing our premier doing something similar. She knows she's in political trouble. She's worried about re-election. She's trying to give the appearance that she's going to do something progressive. But it is a sign of our growing power. It is a sign of the resistance in BC and across Canada to the pipelines and the tankers. I was at the Rio Theatre back in November, and that was the first time I got a sense that we are going to stand up, we are going to stop this. Seeing all of you here tonight, listening to the presentations, I feel even more strongly that we're going to win this one. So thank you very much for being here.
My name's John Gillard. I live in Kitsilano, and I'm going to be taking a little trip up north just for my own tourism, up to Dease Lake, Telegraph Creek, Todagian Mountain, Iskut area. And I'd like Ben to make a connection between what's going on there. We don't hear enough about the fracking and the coal mining, the opens and the headwaters. So I'd like Ben to make a connection between, and bring that to our consciousness, because we aren't really thinking enough about it. Between that, what's going on up there in the sacred headwaters, and what's going on here.
Well, I got to say that's my favorite kind of question. Ben, can you link everything together? So, I mean, there's a lot to put together there, but I mean, put it real simple. You know, the #1 source of royalties in our province right now is from natural gas. You know, it's competing with forestry anyways. Our forestry economy's basically collapsed because of the pine beetle. And, you know, what I think is not well enough understood is how much of that gas is actually going to the oil sands. You know, these issues really are connected. In fact, the Site C dam, a lot of that power is to run the hydraulic fracturing operations. And for anybody who's never heard this term fracking, you know, there's a great film called Gasland that was nominated for an Academy Award, which is worth checking out. But, I mean, we've actually got the world's biggest frack right here in British Columbia. And what fracking is basically you inject high-pressured steam and chemicals underground into shale formations to push gas out of it. So it's another form of sort of non-traditional fossil fuel extraction, quite like what we're doing in the oil sands right now with steam-assisted gravity drilling wells, which is basically the same concept but with oil. And we need that gas because bitumen is not only stinky and heavy, but it's actually a lousy source of fuel. It's got a lot of carbon, but not a lot of hydrogen. So if you want to make a viable hydrocarbon, you have to actually blend natural gas into the bitumen to make something that you can turn into gasoline products. So, you know, the reason why the emissions are so high and the pollution is so high from the oil sands is not just because it's heavy oil and it's mixed with sand and clay and you need to remove it, but actually because you need a tremendous amount of natural gas as well as water and energy, just generally speaking, to produce the oil that we, you know, call the oil sands. You know, so that fracking in northeastern BC is very much being you know, facilitated by the oil sands demand. And, you know, there's money to be made in it, but not a heck of a lot. The price has actually been depressed quite drastically because of the amount of it that's being extracted. And, you know, and it's extremely damaging. I mean, this is stuff that's getting into people's drinking water. You know, it's polluting watersheds. About half of the chemicals that are injected into these wells actually is recovered at the end of the day. So, you know, the other half is still underground somewhere. You know, and it's kind of this out of sight, out of mind thing. You know, it's happening far away from Vancouver, so most of us are not really thinking much about it. But I'm glad that you bring that up because these issues are really connected. You know, as we've all been paying the carbon tax here in BC, our emissions from industrial sources have actually gone up. And, you know, we're all paying the carbon tax, but actually the biggest emitters are exempt from it because they were supposed to be covered by a cap-and-trade plan, which never came to fruition. You know, so what we're seeing is big emitters like our buddies in the hydraulic fracturing industry are actually paying no carbon tax and are actually even benefiting from some of the money from carbon offsets, believe it or not. We're taking money from things like public schools and then giving it to companies for doing stuff that they should have been regulated to do to begin with, you know, by reducing their emissions from the way that they're doing their production. So anyway, as you can see, I could ramble on about this endlessly, but it is important for us to remember that these issues are all connected. You know, the coal mining in this province, a lot of the energy issues in this province are all part of this bigger picture of kind of what kind of economy do we want, what sort of materials should we be exporting to the world, what kind of role do we want to play in the world in the age of climate change, and you know, what we should really be thinking about energy planning. You know, where our demand for energy is largely coming from mines and from fracking. It's coming from oil and from coal. You know, so until we get to the bottom of that, there's going to be increasing demand for energy. And even if it's coming from so-called green sources, it's not really that green if it's, you know, if we're producing power to mine coal, for example. So anyway, lots to talk about on that, and I'm happy to talk more about it with you later.
Great question, great answer.
I really wanted to follow on from the international perspective. That a few months ago I was in the UK and I was looking at the tar sands on the news and I was looking at the issues here, and to emphasise that the rest of the world, and just to emphasise the fact that the rest of the world is watching this issue, and as Rueben said, it has a consequence for every single one of us from a climate change point of view. You have a local resource here that is actually globally special. And I know you appreciate it on a daily basis, but it is globally precious. And just to reiterate Ben's point, that they picked the wrong place, and I wish you the best of luck.
I have a few questions, or a few suggestions. Now, this first line was installed back in the 60s, coming in from Alberta. Why wasn't anything done at that period of time? Why wasn't people yelling and screaming at that period of time? That's one question. Now, there's something else. Now, we've been involved in 2 wars that we had no business of being in the first place. Our national debt has gone straight to the roof. Anything the United States says, we jump up and down like 2 little children and say, yes, Daddy, we will go. I want to ask one more question, and it's a very important thing. How much debt money we owe to the international world, like the United States and other countries, that where we have to borrow money just to pay for our programs we have in Canada, when our dollars are brought in by tax dollars to cover everything we have. And the last part is that the amount of money, believe it or not, the number of people that have died, that paid the taxes, they have squandered it in the stock market. And nobody's complained about it. That's my answer to those questions, sir. If anybody wants to answer them, go ahead.
I could try to take a quick stab at it. I mean, the first part of your question, why didn't anybody complain in 1952? I mean, I was born in 1977, so I can't tell you too much about what happened in 1952, but I mean, I'm sure there were people who had specific concerns, and there's an interesting documentary you can watch about the building of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. It's largely focused on what an engineering feat it was, but it's worth taking a look at because it's a reminder of how difficult these projects are to build. But I think the world's changed a lot since 1952. I mean, that was before we had environmental protection agencies or environment ministers or, you know, an understanding of climate change. You know, so I think we need to look at the world a little differently than we did in the 50s. And a big part of the problem is that we're looking at the world exactly the way we looked at it in the 50s. You know, growth at all costs, sprawl, 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 you know, drill, baby, drill. You know, that sort of approach is just the way of yesterday, and we need to move beyond that. I also think it's worth talking about the connection to military. I mean, one of the biggest consumers of this oil is our military. And also the United States military. I mean, the oil from the tar sands is fueling war. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, if we, you know, reduced the supply of it and drove up the price of it, you know, that would have an impact. You know, so there's a lot of other consequences to this kind of planning, you know, that we should be thinking about. And I think there's common cause between the environmental movement and the anti-war movement, and I hope we do more to bring that message forward. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Thanks, Ben. My name is Luke Thomas from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. I just couldn't leave without giving you a few words. Like I always tell Ben, I have the right to remain silent, I just don't have the ability. So you guys get to hear my opinion. These, you know, the tar sands and oil pipelines are killing people every day, right from where they start to where they end. And we all know who's going to be next. It's just a matter of time. Every day that goes by where they're operating, it's like playing Russian roulette. And this is a global issue. It's a human rights issue. We're all Indigenous people of Mother Earth. But the Tsleil-Waututh Nation are the original occupants of the territory that you're in. It's our birthright and our obligation to protect the inlet and the land around it. Our name is self-explanatory. Tsleil-Waututh Nation means people of the inlet, which means that we belong to the land and water. It doesn't belong to us. It's not the inlet of the people. We're the people of the inlet. And we're asking for your help to preserve the city as we know it. Because if one of those things crashes, when one of those things crashes, it's going to be a huge dead zone. You know, and if we stay here, it's going to kill us. And to the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, that's unacceptable. We lived through, you know, ice ages and war and volcanoes and floods and all this other stuff. And, you know, this can't be the thing that kills us. There's a couple of billionaires from Texas want to make more money here. That's unacceptable. That's not going to be the end of us. And we have legal rights, Aboriginal rights and title. We have a bunch of legal documents that state that we have every legal right to stop them. And we as humans, we have human rights. We have rights that say we can stop these guys legally because they're endangering so many lives and so much of the environment. But these rights cannot be disputed, but they're continuously disregarded over and over. But if we stand together as one voice, like I said, as all Indigenous people of Mother Earth, they can't ignore us forever. And when one of these things crashes, it's going to be too late. Everybody thinks, well, we can pick up and move. Not everybody has the luxury of having the financial ability to move. Everybody who stays here, it's going to kill them. It's going to kill everything within 50, 100-mile radius as the tidal waters go in and out. So the Tsleil-Waututh Nation is asking the public for their support. So we can beat these guys, but Tsleil-Waututh Nation has to be the spearhead that leads this, because legally we can do it. And whether it be, like I said, we're in trouble here. You know, desperate times call for desperate measures. Everybody needs to be educated about how much trouble we're actually in, how dangerous it is that one of these things is going to crash one of these days and it's going to kill everything. Nobody realizes how bad that is. No, like I said, I was telling Ben, my brother Ben there, that it's like being bullied. We're being picked on. Some people have screw you money, some people have screw everybody money. These guys think they have screw everybody money, but they don't know what they're up against yet, not us. They can't do that. And like I said, a bully will keep picking on you every day as long as you take it. If you stand up to that bully, they're going to go find somebody else to pick on. So if we stand up to these guys, they're going to move somewhere else. If we start to fight back and if we stand up and tell them that we're not going to lay down and just take this, then they're going to have to move on. They're going to have to go find somebody else to pick on. And then we'll go help them. Thank you.
No, AJ, I just wanted to add one thing.
One last?
Just 1 sec. I just wanted to say one thing, sorry, before you pass the mic. You know, Luke Thomas, who's walking out the door there, you know, really deserves a lot of our thanks. Luke and Rueben together really spearheaded the campaign at the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And I mean, this is a real small nation that's been super heavily impacted by the impact of settlement. You know, and Luke's been one of the real super courageous people in that community who's pushed really, really hard, you know, for his community to stand up. And I think, you know, a lot of people are following his lead and Ruben's lead. So I just want to thank both of them. Yeah. You know, Luke sounded like a pretty serious guy, but he's also got a great sense of humor. He, at the cover of our newspaper, I don't know if you saw the cartoon of the orca whale on there holding the protest sign. I was trying to look for a name for the whale. You know, he's our new mascot. And so I asked Luke, and I thought maybe he'd give us some, you know, real meaningful Coast Salish language name, you know, something real deep, spiritual. He says, how about Tanker Free Willie? So that's the best name we got, Tanker Free Willie. That's our new mascot. So thanks to Luke for that. But, you know, I wanted to say one thing. You know, Luke said that they're asking for people to show their support for the First Nations who are standing up against these pipelines. And we got a really good opportunity to do that. September 1st and September 2nd, Rueben sent me a text message while I was sitting up here and asked me to remind you of this. On September 1st, there's going to be a canoe journey with First Nations canoe families from all up and down the coast coming into Burrard Inlet and actually landing at Kate's Park, Weyowichin Park, which is, you know, a beautiful park directly across from the Kinder Morgan terminal. So there's going to be, you know, hopefully hundreds of canoes coming from all over the place with First Nations coming to show their support. And we'll be welcome there as allies and supporters on September 1st. To witness the event, to witness the protocols and the ceremony that goes on with these kind of canoe journeys. But then on the 2nd of September, and this is all on the Labor Day weekend, the Wilderness Committee and Tanker Free BC and a bunch of other groups are going to host a festival, Save the Salish Sea Festival, as a way for us to show our support for the efforts of the First Nations people, the Tsleil-Waututh and the Squamish in particular, who've both recently just signed the Save the Fraser Declaration. You know, so I invite you all to come down and be part of that festival on September 2nd. You know, I really could use all the help that you could give us because it's a huge undertaking to organize such a big event. We just decided to do it a couple of weeks ago. So we got a lot of work to do. And also, you know, who here is interested in getting involved in this campaign in in Kitsilano and really standing up for Kitsilano? Most people here? Some of you are too tired to put your hand up, I'm just assuming. All right, well, you know, please do put your name down on that list. I know we've said it over and over again, but we're hoping that these meetings are a beginning, not an end. You know, we want this to be the catalyst of ongoing work. And, you know, what we can tell you from the Wilderness Committee is we'll provide you with the resources, with the, you know, facilitation of meetings, whatever it is that you need, you know, whether it's printing or hosting meetings or doing media workshops or, you know, whatever it is. You know, we're trying to set up these groups everywhere along the pipeline route and around the inlet. Because like Sven said, you know, that's the only way we're really going to stop this thing is by working together. So I do really encourage you to do that. And I know we're getting pretty close to the end, but there's probably time for a couple more comments. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, there's time for 2 or at most 3 more comments. And I just want to put in a plea that before people leave, if we could all do this collectively, put the chairs away over on my left and your right, and we can all be out of here a lot faster than a few of us doing it. Thank you.
Okay, someone, you know, the fellow in the wheelchair asked this question. Why did people not oppose the Trans Mountain Pipeline? Well, I think isn't the oil that went to the Trans Mountain Pipeline oil that had recently been found in Alberta, Saskatchewan, because it's not tar sand oil. It's more like the light oil that's found in Arabia. It wasn't, tar sand oil came much later than 1952, didn't it? And it's far less risky, isn't it?
So, yes, you're right. I mean, the oil that's being shipped through the pipeline is changing. It's only really been economically viable to extract bitumen in a large scale since the price of oil went over $50 a barrel. So it's only really been since about 2001 that we started to, on a large scale, extract bitumen, and you know, it's only been since about 2005 that it's, you know, been scaled up to anything that resembles the current reality. You know, so we have actually seen a pretty drastic change. The only thing I would take issue with is I don't think there's any such thing as clean oil. You know, there's definitely much dirtier oil, but you know, all of it's dangerous. A spill of any of that stuff, even in the processed refined fuels, is extremely problematic. But you know, we're kind of going from bad to worse now with the new kind of oil that we're dealing with.
Hello, I'm a stream keeper in Burnaby. 15 years ago, I went on to Eagle Creek. It was a dead creek. A group of us have now brought back the salmon to Eagle Creek. In the 1960s, I fished the Fraser. No, I did fish the Fraser for salmon with my father, but I did fish Burrard Inlet during the fall with my father. We fished for herring and smelts. And in 1970, those fish disappeared. They went out of the inlet. And one of the reasons, I believe, was the fact that the city of Vancouver was dumping raw sewage into Burrard Inlet. It was around the East Vancouver area. And today, I talked to somebody to verify something, and if Constance is still here?
No, she's gone.
No? Okay, my question to her, And with all due respect to the pipeline, that's down the road, and that's definitely an issue. We have an important issue now polluting Burrard Inlet by dumping raw sewage in an overflow by the city of Vancouver. My question is, how come nobody profiles that? I profile that today.
It's all related, and Ben's going to answer that.
The one thing I can tell you is I know that there's a process at the regional district to look at alternatives, you know, for what it's worth. I mean, I think you're absolutely right to focus on that issue, and it's, you know, reprehensible that's been dumped into our inlet, let alone all the other industrial pollutants from, you know, all kinds of industrial activity over the years. I mean, we did a report just recently on the potential impact of an oil spill on Stanley Park, and what we learned was that it's already an extremely impacted area. I mean, this is an area that's been hit hard by industry over the decades. You know, and the sewage is just one issue. What's being proposed right now is actually creating what's called biosolids, like creating these solid chips of, you know, of waste material that then could be incinerated. I'm not a big fan of that idea either. Some think it's better than the current reality. It's kind of, do you want your pollution in the air or in the water? And you kind of have to choose. It's a tough one because, I mean, you know, our sewage is a big problem, and we're filled with all kinds of toxins, and that all ends up in the natural environment. You know, at the very least, they need to filter it way better. And I mean, the amount of pollution that's just being dumped directly into our inlet is really shameful and needs to change.
Okay, do we have anybody else, or?
We have one.
Okay, we'll take one last speaker.
I like to know whether a meeting like this, so many people come out here with a lot of energy, and everyone, I'm sure, is against the pipeline. I see the pipeline as an enormous monster who really threatens life on our planet. And we all know, I hear so many times, this whole planet is in danger. We exploit it, and for our own benefit, which is wrong, and all life should be protected. I'd like to know whether this meeting and all the people who come here, whether that's directed to the people like Chrissy Clark and our politicians, whether they know that so many people do not want the pipeline, and are they aware, do we have a democracy here where thousands of people don't want the pipeline, and in spite of it, I don't know, they may do it anyway, I'm afraid. What do you think?
Well, that's an excellent question and a good way to end the evening, because I think that increasingly what we've seen, especially from Christy Clark, and I'm glad you brought her up, we're hearing her riding, is that they are aware. Unfortunately, what Christy has done so far has been more about spin than it has been about substantive change. So you probably, all of you heard in the news yesterday, the province announced 5 criteria to approve pipelines that would need to pass. I have to tell you, I was not at all impressed with that announcement. It shows that Christie and politicians are aware that this is an issue that is going to be a vote-determining issue in the next provincial election and in the next federal election for people in British Columbia. But it shows we have to keep working, because we haven't been forceful enough with our opposition yet to really convince them. So I think we should take solace in the small gains that we have made, but we need to continue to get some real solid commitments from politicians of all stripes.
So that's one of your tasks today. I'm so glad we ended on that question, because we do have to constantly be working in communities and with politicians. So I'd like to, just before we go, I'd like to thank Ben West, Sven Biggs, Dave Hood, and Constance Barnes for their knowledge, and equally I'd like to thank you for coming, giving up your time on an evening. You really inspired us, because this hall was packed, and I feel sorry for the people up on the top. I bet it was hot up there. We got to get some windows that open. So please help us. Thank you for coming. Please help us by putting the chairs away. That would be great. Thank you.